Thank you so much. As he said, my name is John Kraft. I'm with PGR. Just for a brief introduction of who PGR is, we're a small company that focuses on innovation solutions, both from a research and development standpoint. We work with all different U.S. Armed Forces, as well as ONR, Office of Naval Research, and DARPA. And so today we're going to go over debloating the TAK-Server. And for our agenda today, we're going to start off with just what debloating is from a general concept, then get specific into Java debloating, which is what the TAK-Server was programmed in, and then go into the TAK-Server debloating results, additional results from other DoD applications, and then finish off with some discussion and questions. So to start off with debloating, the debloating concept of what software debloat is, it's essentially any unnecessary or excessive features, code, resources within the application that doesn't provide any intrinsic value to the application, and it just overall increases the size and complexity without adding any value. And so the reason why that this software bloat is important to consider is that it broadens the attack surface, and increases the bandwidth overhead and reduces the overall application performance. Surprisingly, there's a surprising amount of bloat within different all kinds of applications. One example is that entire libraries can be brought into your application from third-party libraries. So, for example, two extended libraries that you may use part of your application, they also use different libraries from a third party, and they can be brought in from both of those. And so then you have two different versions of the same exact library in your application, one of which cannot be even accessible to the application at all. And so this provides, makes it so that it's a complete bloat within your application. And so in this effort, we started off, Peter kicked off back in 2017 through a CivTAK project, and we've been banging our heads on this software debloating process since. Few of the different debloating tools that we have within our tool belt is the main one being Java debloat, which highlights feature reduction and code removal, as well as Daikondo, which is a container slimming application, and then Mininode, which works on the JavaScript language. So to go into more detail on our specific Java debloating tool, which we call Artist Command, it's a multi-purpose Java analysis debloating and cutting tool. And some of the key features within Artist Command is that it starts off as an analysis tool, with the objective of modeling both the JVM, or what's called the Java Virtual Machine, as well as the behavior of the application. And so this, the behavior of the application, meaning the execution pathway of how the application execute through all the different features that it has. And then following up, it executes the debloating process by removing any unnecessary classes, methods, and jar files within the application. And then it also, Artist Command has the ability to remove entire functionality, which we creatively named the feature removal. And so doing so, it's a precision removal of specific functionality within your application that if you only want to specifically remove from a GUI perspective, a button or a suite of operations, to not modify any other portion of the application. And the reason why this is super important to consider is that it overall improves security by directly and automated removal of potential exploitable code pathways. And so within this, what's called bloat is to go ahead and remove this piece of functionality or code within your application that is not even used in the first place. And so all it's doing there is just sitting there allowing an attacker to potentially utilize in the future. And so here is a diagram of how artist command works. We start off with the user input. And so this implies a customized input with switches, options, different tools that a user can select of how they want artist command to behave, as well as their application. And so from there, it moves up into the artist command processing system. We have what's highlighted, the JVM model. So this is the modeling of the JVM, what the JVM sees from its perspective. And the reason why this is important is we want to see what is visible to the JVM. One example of this being is duplicate classes. Going back to the example of multiple versions of the same library being pulled into the same application. One of those libraries is completely invisible to the JVM, so it's not accessible at all. And so we can go ahead and move forward with removing that. What is not highlighted there, it's more kind of grayed out, but it's still important to mention, which is the behavior modeling, which is modeling the execution pathway of the application. The reason why it's grayed out is the main techniques that we used to debloat the TAK-Server was using the JVM modeling, whereas the behavior modeling is a much more higher complexity problem to resolve because of the dynamic nature of Java. We've had success with other applications using the behavior modeling, but that's a different story. And then moving on from there, once artist command will spit out the same exact artifact of the user input in the same format that can be then used in the production machine and then be used as by the end user. And so this is a late stage transformation within the pipeline. And so it can be directly fed straight into the production machine. This is a artist command, works directly on the bytecode rather than the source code. And so to step into what is the JVM modeling, here is a few main switches that we use within artist command, what we call these impact neutral JVM load filtering. The first one being is the removal of debug information. So this is information that is overall just increases the size within of your application that is not mission critical to your application and can be removed. The second being the removal of duplicate classes. So these are, again, the classes that are unreachable to the JVM and can therefore be removed. And then the removal of multi-release classes. And so the multi-release classes are classes within a jar file that are multiple classes of the same .class file. However, they are compiled with different versions. So for example, if you have a class file that's compiled with 8, 11, and 21, if the runtime environment is using 21, the JVM will automatically select the version 21 to use within the application, and therefore the version 8 and 11 are just sitting there unused and unreachable. And so that is something that we take into consideration when deciding what to remove. And then finally, at the very bottom, we also, as more of a final stage within artist command, is the removal of empty jar files. And so these empty jar files are a result of the removal of whether it's duplicate classes, multi-release classes. And so these are just additional jar files that can be cleaned up and no longer provide any value to be packed up back into your application. And so using these impact neutral JVM load filtering, we've had success with 4 different DoD target applications, one of even being a Scala application. And the reason why we're able to debloat a Scala application is that it compiled down to Java bytecode. And so another driving point of us working on the Java bytecode rather than the source code. And so to get into the TAK-Server initial results, again, the processing and testing, we use these neutral impact debloating settings, including the removal of debug information, duplicate classes, multi-use classes, and then the cleanup phase of removal of all the empty jar files. And for testing purposes, we did a basic command line execution of these different applications and verified that the pre versus post debloat version were the exact same. And so some of these examples that we use for the TAKServer were the TAKServer core, the TAKServer plugins, the Federation Hub broker, and so on. And so here's a brief example of what artist command looks like from a command line standpoint. It's using the analysis tool called Preflight. And so this is a quick, takes less than 60 seconds to analyze the TAKServer core and determine how much size can be reduced based on these different command line options. And so, for example, the debug information, if the user were to want to remove the debug information, 13.1%. Roughly, or at least at the minimum, 13.1% can be reduced, roughly 3% duplicate classes, and 0.1 multi-release classes. And so here are some results that we got from debloating these 9 different TAKServer applications. The main one sticking out, which is the TAKServer core, which we were able to remove roughly just under 24% of the application. And so these percentages, again, reflect the impact-neutral debloating, which is the removal of the duplicate classes, debug information, and multi-release. And so further reductions are still possible, meaning that if we go back to this slide, this just uses the JVM modeling, and so further reduction can be used via the behavior modeling. But that takes more complexity, more effort, and different techniques. Again. And so here is the main punchline here within the TAKServer is that after removal of the bloat bytecode from the TAKServer jars and applications, 6 of the 16 TAKServer applications had embedded jars. And so think of it in terms of having boxes and boxes. In these cases, you have one entire box, which is the application, and then you have many hundreds of jar files, boxes that are just stuffed inside that main jar file. And so, but 100% of those embedded jar files that were able to have some jar files removed. And so 6 out of the 16, all of them had embedded jar files. So whether it's extended libraries that could be entirely removed or other cases. And so in total, out of all the 16 TAKServer applications, 69 total jar files could be removed. And the main one being the TAKServer core, which from a pre-debloat standpoint had 313 jar files, and 39 of those could be completely removed just from using the JVM modeling. And so here are some other results that we've been able to go through from a scanner perspective. And so sometimes jars can create these false positives. And so that is why it became one of the reasons why it became important to remove some of these empty jar files, because scanners may flag jar files just based on the actual name of the jar file, regardless of the usage or the content. And so with that being taken into consideration, if there's no bytecode in the jar file, we completely remove it. And so on the far right side, we see an example of one DoD application that we've had success from a scanner perspective. The pre-debloat version had 43 total CVE findings, and after just using the JVM load model filtering, we're able to get a total down to 16 total CVEs, resulting in 63% reduction in CVEs. One of which being removing a critical CVE, and 4 high, or removing 7 high. An additional tool that to go into detail, which is the container slimming tool, or container debloating tool, which is DICON-DO. It's a tool that removes unused applications and files from container images. So rather than working on the bytecode level from Java perspective, it works on the container level, and so it removes any files or applications within the container that is considered unnecessary for the running an application. And so one example that from in Daikondo that it used is that it was able, in the D2 application, it was able to take a pre-debloat version from 69 total CVEs found down to 48, one of which being a critical and 7 being high. And just as a small comment, it's a complete coincidence that Daikondo was able to remove 1 critical and 7 high, and same thing as the artist command in the D2 application. And so from there, open the floor to any questions or discussions that you may have. And here's some contact information.
The first question is, are those tools available outside of your company, or?
Yes. Yes, they're available to you guys right now.
Okay. On the container slimming, is that literally just going in and removing particular files out of the containers, or does it do the smarter thing if you happen to be based on a Red Hat image of, if possible, remove the RPM using RPM tools?
That I do not know. I would direct that question to Ahmed through the, unpopulated, but see me after and I'll give you the correct contact information to answer those questions.
Reason I mentioned that is a lot of the scanning tools, even if you remove the file, will go, oh, you still have exactly this problem because the database says the tool's still there. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's the tool available at?
It's available on tpcp.io, and contact us to set up an account and we can get you guys, get you up and running.
That was TB.
tpcp.io. Thank you. Thank you for your time.